So I'll get underway. Just review the definitions quickly for review. We have polymorphism here. I'll just let you read that. You probably pretty much know these things anyway. We have encapsulation. That's the protection of code within its own class. Inheritance. We're going to be using inheritance quite a bit. Well, you'll see it in action hopefully today. And the definitions here between properties and methods. So I'm going to open the chat window again here. Did anybody get a chance to work on their homework, which was to start coding the HTML class and HTML class? So I'm just going to quick into more ahead here. So this is our project. Just a simple shopping cart, navigation by links, also by buttons. Submit buttons will navigate. That's fine. We certainly won't have time to go out and validate the credit cards. We'll have a hard-coded array of inventory items, and then these classes are what I envisioned. Now again, this is, like I said, what I envisioned, so you might have your own variety or different way of doing it, and this is why I was hoping you'd be in teams of two, so I could see your different styles of creativity. A little more detail on the credit card class and the inventory class is what I was looking for. These would at least be the properties that we'd be tracking for those two items. This would be the program flow screen. This may adjust a little bit as well in the middle area here of if you want to add more to the cart or select more from the properties or from the product list and so on. So this is what we're going to what we've done. And so today we're going to look at more on our lab and our sample code. Can anyone, if I share give you guys a presenter, can you show me your HTML class? Or would you rather look at mine? Not that mine's the best ever, but would you like to see mine first, or let me see yours? Has anyone heard me? Okay, so did you hear that I was wondering if you wanted to see my code, HTML code, or do you want to show me your own first? Okay, I'm not getting any reply from you, so I will show you my class, my code. Here is my code in Zen Studio. Hopefully you can see that. Okay, you can see my code. So I've collapsed all these methods, all defined by function. These are just some of the basic HTML items that I wanted to define. You'll see on my project list here I have a forms class and a tables class here as well, and we'll look at that in a minute. So who can tell me what this method is going to do? The double underscore construct. When is that triggered? What happens and how? To initialize the class HTML. Okay, that's one way of saying it. What it does is it automatically runs this method, double underscore construct. It's a magic method in PHP 5. It automatically runs whenever the class HTML is instantiated. Now I'll open up my login page just to have it ready to show you how we instantiate a class. But now I'll expand this code. So all I'm going to do here, since it's an HTML class, I'm going to use it to build a web page every time. So when I construct the class, I may as well build the basic layout of a HTML page. So here I have HTML tag, new line. My new line string here is just so my code is readable if I ever want to look at the source code of a web page. If I don't have these /n's here, new lines, then the code will all just string together in one line, and it's really hard to read. The generated code, that is. Then the head tag and the title tag, and here I'm passing in the title variable into this method, and I'm just making that part of the echo statement and turning off the title, head, and then I'm starting the body tag. So my initialization of the page, of course, if you have any other information that you want to put, like meta tags or anything in the top of every one of your pages, you can put that in here as well. And that will generate the output whenever the class is instantiated. So you can see from that with this title passing into the constructor, you can be very flexible with how your pages build. So you could probably, as you build your pages, you can, like I said before with the meta tags, you can adjust every page to have different content in the parts above the body, in the head region if you want. But again, this is just a simple one with a title, and we'll see this in action. So the opposite to the constructor is the destructor. It's a method that is run when the class is destroyed. That's why it's named that way. When it's removed from memory, or when your PHP script just finishes at the end, last line of code. So you can call it manually if you want to at any time. If you're done with a class and you have a lot more code to go through, you can just run the destructor and it'll remove it from memory if you want. Or it'll just, like I say, disappear at the end of the script running. So here, again, I'll expand that. The destructor here is just I want to put in a few blank line, a horizontal row, line on the screen, close my body tag, and close my HTML tag. So that's just basically a page footer. Again, I can put all kinds of information in the bottom. You see some web pages have a menu at the bottom, a menu of links like how to contact us and those kind of things. You can put those in this method if you want. So I'm just going to move this code up to just underneath my constructor just to have them close to each other. And what we have now are just some of the methods for a basic HTML page. I have an image tag. This code is, these are functions that I'm going to call that will generate HTML for me. And I'll expand these here in a minute. So this is a masthead. We're going to use that in our project, so that's a special, it's not really an HTML tag that we're creating there. But the image and the anchor tags are the two that we're going to use the most. And spacers, I use that just for if I ever want to put in non-breaking space. I can default it to 1 and just call the spacer method, or I can pass in any number, 5, 6, 7, for the number of spaces I want to use. And I run a little for next loop to create the tag string and then return that back to the calling code. Again, by the way, hopefully you can see this code. I've made it a little bigger since the last time, so hopefully it's readable. So that's a spacer. I call it spacer. You could just call it space or non-breaking space or whatever you want. The new line again here is just inserting a carriage return and a break tag into the code. So if you ever want to do some new line insertions into your web pages, same idea. How many of them are you going to put in? You can put in 5 or 10 at a time, or just 1 at a time, depending on the situation at the time. Raw text, this is just text that's going out onto the screen, onto the browser, and I wrap it in a span tag, and I return the tag to the calling method. So we'll see this in action here in a minute. But like I said, I wanted to spend some more time on inheritance. And the way I've designed this, again, I've said this a few times, everyone has their own style. There's different ways to do it. But I have done it that the HTML class is very basic, and as I expand my tags that I want to build, I put them into different categories. So I have then the table tag. Anything that has to do with tables I put in here, like table header tags or table rows, columns, and things like that. We'll see that in a minute. And then anything here to do with forms, beginning forms, submit buttons, things like that will go in here. So the image tag, we'll just take a little deeper look at the image tag code that I've written in this class. What I did was, I've written this a couple years ago, so I'm just refining the code here, is that I will be passing in these options. The source of the image, the ID, the class it belongs to, any title I want to put on it, any style code that I want to insert, and an array of actions like on key, down, or on blur, things like that. Any kind of image actions, mouse over, things like that I want to do, pass into this tag. So I begin this tag. I just start writing HTML tags, code, and here I pick up the source that's passed in. The source is mandatory because I don't have any predefined values. So this source value is mandatory, everything else is optional to this function, to this method. So here's my source, and then if there's anything in the class or anything in the ID, I just build this tag as I go. So dot equals, I just append the tag content, HTML content as I go. At the end of this, I give it a little space as I close my values, just so it's properly formatted HTML. Then there's title. Excuse me, if you've noticed in the difference between Firefox and Internet Explorer, when you hover over an image, one of them only uses the title or the alt value, and the other one uses title for hovering over an image. So this is taking care of both of those. I put them in both values, the alt and the title attribute, and that builds it for both browsers at one go. Then if I'm doing any style, inline style code, I put it in next. And the last one is my on-type actions. I just loop through that array with a for each, and I build the tag with a type and an action. So I could be doing, the array would be on blur, and then what would happen, the type would be on blur, and the action would be what happens, maybe calling a JavaScript function when that happens. Then I close the tag, and for readability I put in a new line break, and I return this tag to the calling code. Any questions on the image tag? And then we'll take a quick look at the anchor tag. It's very similar. No questions? Okay. So the anchor tag is same idea. Now I'm testing, see if I did that here. Image. Right, so all of these things I'm testing to see if their values are actually passed. And if they're not passed, then I don't bother inserting that blank attributes into the element, into the HTML element. So here we're building an anchor tag. We start with the A and the href. So again, the URL here in this case and the link are both mandatory, so you have to pass those in. Everything else is optional, and then there's the on-type actions array again, and we see that down here. So what we're actually building is code, PHP class code, that will generate HTML pages for us. So like I said, we're going to take a look at, well, let's look at the login page now. Okay, so I just insert this code at the top whenever I'm testing out my pages, so I can turn display errors on and off individually. That's nothing to do with object-oriented coding. That's just me to have feedback on my web page. And I can just look at warnings, or I can see all of the errors, and all I ever have to do, right now it's off, all I have to do is just turn that to a 1, and then I'll have my errors displayed. So it's good for quick debugging in that sense. I start a session here because we're going to insert values into the login page. So this is a login page, the first page we want to build. I'm requiring my classes, class files, and then I have two functions. And this is just the way I'm doing it. A show page and a check page. And then I have as these are just defined functions. Nothing calls them until I get down here, and it's a very simple trigger. Has anything been posted? If it is, check the page. It's a little bit reverse technology. Did I just lose you? No. The interface disappeared, so I didn't know what happened there. Okay, so you're going to check the page. If something's been posted, that means that the form's been submitted. If not, that means it's the first time in. It's a little bit of reverse logic. Then we'll show the page. So we're just calling these two functions. When I think about it now, since this show page has the object class more than the check page, those requires could probably be put inside the function and save some code overhead in that sense. So as you can see, I've got the HTML tag class. That's the first one I was just showing you. Then there's the table class and the forms class. They're all variations on the theme. So I just wanted to show you how they were being required, and then we'll look at how they're being used. So let's go into the tables class, which is next, and I will collapse all of them. I'm going to do this manually. I forgot how to do it all at once. You can have it set like that to collapse them all when you first load every page in the window preferences. Anyway, so here we have just a few tags for anything to do with the table, HTML table. So we have the table begin, we have the header, if we're doing row headers. We have turning a row on, row off, column on, column off, and the end of the table. That one I didn't collapse, but all we're doing is the table tag, turning the table tag off. So the table begin, there's all kinds of options there. When you look at HTML, you can say the align, the width, the cell padding, cell spacing, border, what CSS class it belongs to, ID, any background color on the table, and any inline style you're going to send in. And that'll just be the table tag. So again, this is all just variation on, I didn't send this to you. I did send you some of the HTML class. I sent a little bit of this to you to get you started. And I'll just save that. So, same idea, but notice here we're extending HTML. So I'll ask that question, what does that keyword do for us? What does the extends keyword do? What's it doing on that line, line 3? It's telling it to inherit, correct? Inherit from the HTML class, right? So basically that means everything in the HTML class is now also part of the table class, as long as its scoping attributes allow for that, and we're going to go over that a little bit here later on. Notice now, though, there is no constructor class method, and there's no destructor method. When that's extended like this, we don't have to redefine any method in an ancestor class if we don't want to. We can extend the class methods as well if we wanted to. We could have a construct method here, Now if I built a construct method here, what would happen to the construct method in the HTML class? Would it still be active, or would it still be called? How would that work? So if I had function underscore construct here, what would happen to the construct method in the HTML class? Any ideas? Nothing? Well, I'll tell you. What it does is it overrides the construct method in the HTML class. So this, if we create or instantiate the table class, then the construct method will only run in the table class. The HTML construct will not run unless we actually call it. And how we would call it would be HTML construct. So we could do some, this is one way to extend a method, and it's also a way to override. We could, if we didn't have this code here at all, that would totally override the method. But we could use it, we could still call the parent method by directly referencing it in this way. But since we had no construct method here at all, then it will automatically trigger its call from the HTML class or its parent class. Is that clear on inheritance and extending methods? Any questions on extending, overriding methods? No questions? Okay. So after the table class, then we call in the forms class. Now again, forms is anything to do with an HTML form. And we just have these few methods: beginning the form, any hidden values on the form, an input label, and an input type. So the label is the label describing the input value. The input is, we'll see this in a minute, the input type, whether it's a checkbox or a single line edit or a radio button or anything that's similar to an input type. And the only variation on that really is the text area, so I made a separate method for that. So when the form begins, if you've noticed in this code, in my show page, in the main area where I'm testing it, I say if post posted. So I have a value that's posted in a form that in the post array that I'm checking. So when I create a form and I begin the form, I always put in a hidden value called posted and give it a value of 1. Now I don't know if it's still the case, but maybe 5-6 years ago there was an issue with Internet Explorer that would return a different value if you pressed enter on a page, on a screen, as opposed to clicking a submit button. That took me probably a week to figure out at the time. So my solution was always put in a hidden value and give it a value of 1. So at any time, whether this form is submitted by an enter key or clicking on the submit button, this value is always set, and I know that the form is being submitted. So this is what I test for. Does it exist? If it exists, then that means the page has been submitted, so go ahead and check the page. And by that I mean we would be doing data validation and so on. Does that make sense? Okay, do you see what I'm kind of getting at here? We'll go over the code now for the show page. So what I've done is, again, right here, forms is extending table class. Okay, so table extended HTML, and forms is extending table. So we have 3 classes in an inheritance tree: HTML, form, HTML table, and then form. Now the advantage here is that I can create HTML code anywhere I want at different levels. So if I have I just want to build a table, has nothing to do with a form, I can inherit down to the table class, and I don't have to deal with the form class at all, which saves me bringing in code. So if that was the case, then I wouldn't have to bring in this code, and I would save that much code overhead. So that is one very good advantage of inheritance. Another advantage is the ability to now take this code and use it. So since I've inherited down to the form level, I'm just going to start calling a new form tag, a new form class. Now again, when I call a new form class, it also did not have a constructor method. Therefore, it has to go up to its table parent to see if there's one up there. There isn't one up there. So it has to go all the way up to its next parent, which is the constructor, which is the HTML class, and it does have a constructor, and it runs that one. So what we're doing here, even though we're going new form with the form class, we're actually calling the constructor in the HTML class 2 levels up. And I'm creating my own object called myPage. So now any of those methods and any of these 3 classes I have access to directly because in this object, because it has 3 levels of inheritance. Does that make sense? Okay, so since we only have an hour and it's almost 10:02 my hour, we're going to take a 5-minute break, and then I'd like to share if I can, change the presenter to you and see what your code looks like so far. Is anyone prepared to do that? who wants to? Okay, well, take a break now. I have, it's 10 minutes to, we'll just take a 5-minute break, and which really just cuts into the hour. But then I want to show you the code and how it works. I'll send you all this code at the end of class today, and so you can carry on with building the interfaces as part of the project. So let's be back in 5 minutes. This is the time I have right now, and we'll come back in 5 minutes. Okay, is everyone back? Maybe you never left. Okay, so we're back. I was going to ask someone to send me their code that they've done so far, but we only have about 5-10 minutes left in today's class, so maybe you can do that through email. What I want to show you now is how I'm building this page. So, and again, I'll send you this code. So this function showing the page, like I said, takes from the form class, which is inherited from the table class, which is inherited from the HTML class. I've put that object into my page variable, and as I call these methods, if you notice the methods usually all return a value. So they're returning a tag, and this tag is an HTML tag that I'm building in this method, and I'm returning it as text. So what I do then is I start an output variable that just starts collecting the output of each of these methods, and then after the first one I concatenate to each method call, the result of each method call to the output variable. At the end of it, all I have to do is echo output, and inside that variable is the entire HTML page, except for anything in the destructor method. So here you can see I'm calling methods from any of these different inherited classes. Masthead is here, that's from the original HTML class. Table obviously is from the table class. Form is from the form class. Row is from the table class. Label is from the form class, and so on. Now in ZenStudio, I don't know if you know this, hopefully you do, is if you want to see the syntax of a method, you just simply put your cursor right beside the opening brace and hit Control Shift space, and you will get the whole list of attributes that are being expected in that method. So that's handy. As well, if you want to see the code itself, you put your cursor anywhere on the method name, push F3, and it will take you to that code, as long as it's in the same project. There are ways to connect projects in the language properties, in the project properties area with the include path. So if you add libraries or projects, if you had different projects all linked together, the F3 would work as long beyond the single project if you put entries in there. So those are quick ZenStudio tips. But what we're trying to do is then if you've anyone ever want to look at that code, like I say, you just push F3, it takes you to the code, you can see what's going on, and then you go back to where you were. Very handy. So this is the page being built, then it's echoed out. When it's run, then the next time, I just test to see if the post value exists in the post array, and if it does, then that means the page has been submitted, so I check the page. In this case, all we wanted to do was pick up the user and put it in the session, and then change location to the next page. So that's all I'm doing here. However, in this check page function, what you'd really want to do is validate any information that came in, make sure the user name and password match, things like that, security accesses and so on, before you move on. So in a typical page, there'd be database connections where you're checking your entered username and password and so on. So in this project, we're not doing that. So let's see how this page runs. Here we are, localhost class login page. If I just refresh this, then the page builds. Now, user and password, if you noticed, were background of light gray. So here's just one of the attributes that I'm changing. I can change this to yellow, and then I can change this to blue, and save the code, rerun it, and the backgrounds will change. So if we want to, I don't know if you can look at source code from in here, you can't, so I'll run this out in the real browser. We'll look at the code. Make that a little bit bigger for you. And there's a generated code. Just straight HTML, really. But we built it through classes. Here's the background color of yellow, background color of blue, the form begins, the table begins. So as you can see, I've missed a few /n's in line returns for readability, but generally I've made them all. Here's our masthead, which is welcome to our shopping cart string. If you notice, that is right here. Also in the head, we put some value up there as well from when we created the class itself. So that's up here in the title. Any questions so far? Not so far, okay. Well, we're at the end of our time. I know we started a little bit late, but I do want to keep close to the 1 hour. I'll put those both back to light gray. Didn't save it. Refresh that. It should be going back to gray. Okay. The subsequent page I've written, that is product listing. Here's same thing. I'm inheriting using these classes, but here's my array of products. I've only done 3 things: a pocket calculator, a memory stick, and a letter opener. Here's the new instantiation of a form. This time I'm using the masthead of the username, what comes in from the password page here, that after I would validate username password, I loaded the username into the session, and then I just merely pass that into the masthead method, picking up the session of who signed in. So that was one of our requirements, that I wanted to see who the user was on each page. Okay, you have one question? Go ahead, and then we'll wrap it up for today.
Yeah, Peter, we have one question regarding HTML elements. If we have JavaScript functions like on-click or on submit like this event, so we have to change this in a form class. We have to insert an array parameter in the function, so that we can use that functionality of JavaScript also. I think this is my opinion for the functions of input functions, like function input.
So you're asking, go ahead.
If we have the dynamic parameter for the any JavaScript function, then how can we do this?
So we have to just insert the function parameter like array, which contains the on event click
Right.
or on.
Okay, that was in the HTML code. So here's my on type. Right. So this array would have to be built before you call this method.
Yeah.
And again, this is just how I did it. So I would build an array with so in here somewhere I would say well, what method was that? Image. Okay, so if I'm doing an image, I would build on events, maybe. Let's go array on blur would get the JavaScript function, I don't know, image change. Maybe as you pass it over an image, it would change from one to another, like that. Then all I would have to do is and any of those. So if I had more events, I could just create more elements in this array. Then I would just do the excuse me. Something happened to my keyboard. Interesting. See if I can do this. There we go. Image, source, and then I'd have to go all these other attributes down to on type, and then just put in on events in here. So there would be still values in here, of course, in these attributes, but the last one is the on events, or the on type actions. So that's an array. I'm passing this in. Then it would, in the image, it would pick this up here and then go through it and build a type. This would be on blur, and this would be that method I called. Now that JavaScript itself would have to be included somewhere, maybe as another require here somewhere, or just handwritten into that code. Does that make sense? Did I lose you? Hello?
Peter, I have one question again. That it will impact on the performance of the application. I hope so that performance will be slow down.
What would slow down?
If we are not using HTML directly and we are using an OOPS concept of creating an HTML entities, so it will create the performance issues, or it's minor performance issues will create.
You're not using HTML directly?
Yeah, we are not using it directly. We are using a function, using our forms classes and creating HTML and tables classes, and we have the uses of these three classes we create in HTML form. So it will create a performance issues or not. That's why we are concerned about this.
Well, I'm not saying this is the absolute best way to go. I'm saying there's many different ways. I think ultimately the best way to go is in a bit larger projects is with some design patterns like model view controller and so on. We're just trying to get across the concept of inheritance and classes and so on. So performance-wise, probably this is not the best. I would give you that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You can always do performance tests and profiling and so on to see which approach is faster.
Okay. Okay.
So we're a little 10 minutes over. Are there any other questions then?
No, we have no any question. Thank
Okay.
you.
I'll send you this code and you can start playing with it. Just to have something to work with and to keep going with our projects. Again, this is just a learning process. Hopefully you'll get some good tips out of this for basic object-oriented concepts. Again, whether it's the absolute best method and approach is still to be determined. So homework then will be to continue this code, enhance it to how you like, make it look, make it functional to our design elements here. Like we want to do this with the login name and how many items are in the cart and so on. So we'll work on those two pieces this week, and please send me any code or any questions that you have along the way. So in another 10-15 minutes I'll send out the code that I built so far. Any last minute questions? Okay, well thank you for class today, and we'll see you next week and communicate through email. Bye for now.